Welcome to GigaBrain, brought to you by Spell Labs. This is the podcast where we speak to the smartest minds across the DeFi space, exploring the ideas, innovations, and people shaping the future of crypto.
Hello guys, and welcome once again to another episode of GigaBrain podcast. We are here today with Chandler De Kock, the co-founder and CEO of Silhouette Exchange, which bills itself as the Shield Exchange, bringing private trading to Hyperliquid. Chandler, thank you so much for being with us here today. And let's kickstart with a little bit about your background. Why are you in crypto? Why you think that crypto is the thing, and why Silhouette? So why are you here today?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here. My background, I was meant to be after university, I graduated with economics and a bit of maths and computer science. And I was meant to be a TradFi trader type person. I worked at a local bank in a graduate program in my home country of South Africa. And I lasted 2 weeks at the graduate program. I was sitting on the FX desk, and I look around, and most of the folks around me didn't really give me a lot of joy. I was going to spend the best part of my life with the most amount of energy, hoping to be, my boss's boss at some point. And I didn't really kind of feel that was the right place for me. So at the time, it was a relatively hard decision, but I left and joined a small startup that at the time was called BitX. And we were the local crypto exchange for emerging markets. BitX eventually got rebranded to Luno, and then kind of my journey into crypto started from there. It was an electric environment. This was a little bit before the 2017 run. We had built all the systems broke at these exchanges, as I'm sure most folks in crypto that have worked at an exchange know. And I was hooked. I believed in the ethos at a fundamental level. I knew it was going to be an upgrade to the financial system. And I was in that journey for the best part of my career. And I knew it was going to be the space I wanted to be in. At the time, it was quite a fun kind of like growth opportunity. My role was very much building out the payments infrastructure, how to get like the traditional fiat currencies into crypto and back into, in and out, which at the time was actually one of the most hardest challenges for many of the exchanges, given that banks didn't really love the idea. I made a joke that if, for this exchange, if I'd opened up like 300 bank accounts, 295 of them would eventually close. So we were running out of banks that would literally bank a crypto exchange. And my specialty is launching markets that today are somewhat liquid, but at the time weren't, and relatively hard markets like South Africa, Nigeria, and Malaysia, and a couple others. And for me, that was a really exciting part of what we were trying to do, is like just bring crypto to as many of the folks in the world as possible. And after my time at Luno, I went into the DeFi space. Fell in love with just this whole concept of programmable Lego blocks. And worked at a couple projects along the way, and really felt like there was something really interesting being built. And like some of the people that I was seeing coming into the space, the smartest folks, there were folks that were leaving their TradFi jobs after like decades, and that for me was the strong signal to like kind of bet the farm or my career on this industry. From ultimately seeing like this is a relatively like interesting space that like my ideology like was very much close to, but then going back to like then seeing all the really, really smart, like hungry and ambitious folks trying to build something, I was like, cool, this has actually got some legs behind it. It's not just this weird internet money. A lot of the true financial rails that like we've all been talking about in crypto since like 2015 are actually happening. And now in 2025 and 2026, a lot of that kind of exists today. And I would have never guessed what that looked like back then. But I always knew at some point it would become a thing.
No, that's beautiful. And also, by the way, as a follow-up question, like how is the crypto environment specifically in Africa and South Africa? Like it's booming, it's something that is growing, it's still not very much there. Like how do you see it?
Yeah, a percentage of population ownership of crypto in countries like South Africa and Nigeria are some of the highest in the world. In terms of the, overall market size is not as big as the European countries or maybe the US, but percentage of ownership within these countries are huge. The demand for USDC in Nigeria is kind of ridiculous. If you go look at the premium, you have one USDC versus like buying a US dollar at a bank. There is a huge premium in the crypto version of it, and that's just simply because of user demand there. There are like really cool and interesting payment infrastructure companies that are going crypto first. These are your everyday like money transmitters, your global remittance companies. They get a huge bedrock in these emerging markets. They don't make big splashes in the global world because they're not the fancy new DeFi primitive out there. But real fundamental businesses are being built with real fundamental kind of like use cases that are out there. I wouldn't say it's an easy company to build in these markets, but if you know what you're doing, you can kind of make some meaningful impact.
You are helping real people, real population that actually need to exchange money around. So that's super nice. But yeah, so looking at Silhouette right now. So what is the story behind Silhouette, and why Silhouette, and why it matters as of today, especially bringing privacy, which is something that for me also, I started in crypto in 2013. So like really older OG here, started with BTC, then went from ETH, then went onwards to DeFi too. And like for me, I got into crypto because of privacy, because of blockchain is anonymous, like the early internet days, like BTC was all over dark web, and it was like the dark web coin pretty much. And for me, that was what hooked me in the first place, like all the privacy things. So seeing Silhouette as a main thing of being private, that for me like speaks a lot. So I'm really curious about that.
Yeah. The thesis that we kind of think about every day when we're building our products is, in order for like the world to come onto financial rails that crypto can empower, there needs to be some case for privacy. Now, I don't mean like the privacy that you get from your centralized exchange, that you can kind of like hide some of your transfers, or privacy tools like Tornado Cash, where you can kind of like break free of any tracking software. I think about privacy as like, if you're going to be building a real business on chain, there are certain components that you want to have open and transparent, and then for other use cases, there are parts that you don't want to have open and transparent. Good example here is if you send me $100 on chain today, it's basically like sending me your bank statement. But if I turn around and ask you, hey, dude, please send me your bank statement, like that, it's kind of a weird like way that we, that would be a weird thing. So for me, it's really important to kind of like delineate like why and where privacy matters. At a fundamental level, markets that are open and transparent are really good coordination mechanisms. Everyone understands the rules of the game, whether you're using a DEX like Hyperliquid, whether you're using like Ethereum. These are really important for everyone to build trust around. Okay, this is how it's executed, and I know what's going to happen. Kind of, the whole traditional financial system uses regulations to achieve a portion of that. But then there is also the component of like, individuals and maybe entities in that environment don't necessarily want to have components leaked to the world. You can think of like a very successful trader saying, being copy traded or being front run, and people pick up these like abilities or these signals, and their ability to pick it up is getting ever and ever faster. Like right now, today, I think these chains are the most indexed things in the whole wide world. And so that the world is going to look at what you're doing. And then that people are going to look at what you're doing. Your decisions might change. And maybe even there are some entities which we do know of today that will just simply not use these open and transparent systems. Like their IP is in their order flow or their portfolio construction. And we care about bringing those folks on chain because ironically, that's a very institutional type way of thinking. And, what we want is to kind of blend the crypto world with the traditional world and also just the everyday business world. And in order for those to come on chain, there has to be a case for privacy. It's kind of an obvious one. I think it's a lot harder to find product market fit with privacy, specifically when you're trying to figure out the use cases that are out there. But that's exactly the solution Silhouette's looking to solve directly. Every day, we talk to customers, we talk to users, and figuring out exactly what that looks like and feels like.
Got it. So what is the real problem that Silhouette is solving in DeFi trading, and what is the cost of transparency? Like, it must be high, right? So the cost is high, I assume.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the cost of transparency is high, because it's a coordination tool. Like, transparency is really important, as I mentioned, on a market level, but on an individual level, traders do say, I get front ran, or I get copy traded, or people hunt me on perps. These are like signals that, like, the ability just to see absolutely everything at all times does have a cost on the individual level. And we want to build tools that like enable those users to execute their trades, their views in the market, in a way that they can feel like, okay, this is my view. I want to keep this to myself. I don't want the world to know about it. It's a very valid kind of outcome, which is very different to where many of the other privacy tools that are out there, they care very much around, keeping things private for the sake of privacy. And I think there's a slight nuance between I want to keep my views out away from the world, kind of because of whatever reason. If I'm a trader, this is my alpha. If I'm a portfolio manager, being seen to like sell some tokens might be a bearish signal. You can imagine, like, if I'm a treasury and I'm selling tokens, like that's a on a legitimate case, like let's say, for example, the treasury is doing it legitimately to fund expenses. They might not want to let that kind of the world know at that point in time, but they're a good team, so they will disclose that at some point. Obviously, then there's the counter positive where it's like, and we've seen this quite recently actually in Hyperliquid, where some folks just kind of rug you. How do you promote the one positive use case, but then also mitigate against the other use case? That's also kind of part of where these discussions become quite an interesting area to solve.
Got it. And what about those users that don't really care much about privacy, but so they care more about the market privacy, as you said, right? So you are catering specifically for the users that want that mask on the trading aspect and not the pure privacy aspect. That's exactly what you're saying, right? I got it. So and with this, like, so do you find a market fit for this type of use? Like, there are a lot of people wanting to a tool like this.
Yeah, so we get a lot of folks that reach out to us and kind of ask, what do we enable? What's the level of privacy that we offer? What tools do we have? And we're very much an early stage. We're in MVP at this point in time, so we have a very basic version of this out today, and then kind of distill all that like user flow feedback and kind of desires into the next set of products that we would want to build. And so, yeah, there's been, a relatively strong case for it. We wouldn't be building this if like no one cared about it. But then the other side to your point, like, does everyone care about privacy? And the short answer to that is no, not everyone cares about privacy, and it's not necessarily for everyone. Just like, I might not care about social media, but it's like I still have a Twitter account, or, that. And so for us, we very much cater for the folks that do care about this sort of thing.
No, that completely makes sense. Yeah, and why Hyperliquid specifically? That's a great question here.
Yeah, there's a person in Hyperliquid that introduced me to Hyperliquid early on, and I had a look at it and I was like, cool, this is another perp DEX, guys. Like, what, we've seen this before. They come, they go. What's special about this? And then this is a really good friend that I trust very deeply. And they said, no. Do check, double check, like go in. And I was like, cool, they've got volume, they've got users, cool. And they're like, cool, join the community and see the vibe. And that's kind of what intoxicated me. I had a really good experience with the community. It felt like Ethereum 2017, Solana 2021, just like people that are really, really passionate about doing good stuff. And that early cohort of Hyperliquid builders was an intoxicating feeling to be in. And then I think it's that this is in like June 2025. I'd tried Hyperliquid a couple times and used it a little bit, and then started trading a little bit more. And then by token 2049 that year in Singapore, I had the pleasure of meeting Jeff, because I knew I wanted to start something. And Jeff,
me too, man. I have a crazy story. So I met Jeff before token in Korea in KBW, And this was when he first showed up with his first bodyguard, because in token Singapore he had 3 bodyguards, I think, but in token he had 1 only. And he came on the first time on stage on this very small venue in Korea. And when he was going backstage, I thought to myself, I need to speak with him like ASAP. So I ran to the backstage, and then I see his bouncer running and like trying to like choke me. And then I say like, no, I just want to say hello and just take a picture and say like, I love Hyperliquid. And then they were like, cool. I spoke like with him for like 2 minutes, and he was like super nice. Like, yeah, like, thank you so much, and like super, 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 super cool. So yeah, I love that. I love that that Jeff inspire you, because like I think he's inspiring everyone really. So that's beautiful, really. But please continue. Sorry to interrupt. I just got excited about Jeff.
No, that's
story.
that's an amazing story. I don't think right now I would be able to have that kind of interaction. But it got down to like, my key takeaway, we'd obviously discussed what I was trying to build. Jeff gave some pointers, had, some pushback, some thoughts, and, it was a very good builder conversation. But then throughout the experience, it was very like pre, post, and then also the rest of token. I got a very clear sense that these are builders that are building it from like a very strong principle level. I'd been in crypto since about like 2015, 2016, had seen all the shenanigans that have happened. Every single time we see like these bad actors do something quite bad, it was it kind of like stung in my heart, because it's the world then kind of saw us in a lens, and I was like, but there are so many good, honest, smart people out there like doing some really good things. And for me, I always kind of like gravitated to those types of folks, and it was kind of immediately apparent that Hyperliquid was going to be that type of environment. And I mean, proof is in the pudding. They've kind of kept to their principles. And theoretically, I could have built Silhouette anywhere in the world, but that combination of like a really like exciting builder environment tied into an ecosystem that was building for a longer term vision. There's no better place in the whole wide world for a builder that's trying to start out to kind of work. And so for me, that was kind of an obvious choice. At the time, Hyperliquid wasn't as well known within the builder space. And so I had to kind of like convince the rest of my team to kind of, learn a little bit about Hyperliquid. But once they kind of saw it, again, that whole like ethos was very quick and transparent, apparent. And so for me, that was the ultimate reason.
Absolutely. And inside Hyperliquid, is there any other type of solutions that cater to privacy specifically that that are you competing with anyone else, or are you alone in this game on Hyperliquid?
There are a few teams that are building. I'm not sure at what level of like publicity they've put out there. I think we were the first ones to come out and mention it. And so we are, I think we were the first. There will be others. I think, from a healthy ecosystem perspective, you definitely want more than one team doing this. And so, we will probably end up having competitors at some point in the future. And yeah, I think, all roads lead to liquidity when it comes to like building infrastructure and like connection layers. So we're going to see a huge amount of consolidation across like, wallets, order management systems, like terminals, trading views, mobile apps. They're all going to kind of plug into these sources of liquidity. And we're seeing that now, like, I don't know, every other day there's a new announcement of somebody integrating Hyperliquid. And so like for me, one or two of these might end up seeing the use case for privacy as well.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. 100% agree. Yeah, so looking now a little bit more on the broader market perspective, and I know that you also have a lot of experience in the market. So I'm curious, for you in these past few years, like which was like the biggest lesson that you learned by building in DeFi so far?
The Lego blocks are harder than you think. What you sometimes think is like a privilege in Web 2, where you get to like just really be able to like test something very, very quickly, takes a little bit longer in DeFi. At the same time, like there are so many Lego blocks that you can use. Look at like a lot of the EVM applications, like the whole EVM ecosystem, like exploded overnight. Why? Because folks like ported other technologies, kind of made it their own. And, we have these really good money markets that are out there. We have these really good swap markets that are out there. Like the different Lego blocks kind of like tie quite nicely into Hyperliquid. The bridging solutions also kind of work really, really, really well. So for me, I think that like the best thing, less of a challenge, but maybe a bit more of like an exciting prospect is the like whole concept of DeFi Lego blocks really did like play out within Hyperliquid, right? And I think for most of the builders out there, I think, we're all standing on top of the shoulder of giants. Those early DeFi builders really did something good. And it's like up to like this next cohort of builders that want to build something else to like, improve, like kind of push the agenda forward, find new and interesting ways to go and approach certain problems. And actually also ironically fail in some of these approaches, right? There's like completely like a valid thing of like saying, hey, I'm going to try this new thing. It might not work, but hey, it like kind of like ties in a little bit later. And actually, if you think about it, like, it might be just a timing thing. Cause like before Hyperliquid, there were a couple perp markets out there, but nothing like kind of one like Hyperliquid. And there was a centralized version. So like the concept of decentralized like exchanges that are like focusing on perps, wasn't as big as what it is today. And that's a testament to Hyperliquid. So it's even just like, the basics, you might be able like to try it again in a couple of years time. And that's like a thing I really appreciate about DeFi builders. Like, your idea might be like a really, really good one. And it might be just a question of time. And is the market receptive to your idea?
Very, very true, very true. And that leads me to my next question, which is in terms of market trends, like which trend do you see that is popping in 2026? So the way that I see it is maybe like 2023, 2024 was like staking and restaking. Then 2025, definitely Hyperliquid. 2026, I think still Hyperliquid, but what do you see more apart from this?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the commoditization of these kind of instruments that DeFi kind of built out, specifically using perps and exchanges. We've seen the proliferation of like equity perps, commodity perps. I think we're going to see a lot more of those. I think that's going to be a very good catalyst for these liquid sources, these liquidity venues to then start tying into the rest of the ecosystem, right?
Right.
What only late last year did HIP3 come online, and now we've got what like 2-3 dozen markets that are up and running in the space of no time. In the grand scheme of finance, like this is no time, really. There's all the distribution channels that are out there from the wallets that have already integrated. I think the integration to enable these HIP3 markets is going to be relatively low lift. Now you've got every single wallet out there with basically the same infrastructure, or the start of the same infrastructure that most like Robinhood has, the Revolut and these banking apps have. Then you start building in like payments infrastructure that kind of allows you to like start paying with these kind of buying and selling produce using kind of like Visa or MasterCard. That becomes an interesting business to play. The whole stablecoin thing also becomes quite huge. Like I think like perps and the all the different markets that spin up as a function of those will be really, really powerful. And then there was a lot of excitement about USDH. I think the excitement died a little bit, but like on the underneath, all the promises that really kind of happen, most of those will come true. And like we'll see kind of the concept of stable coins like really, really grow as well. And that's one that I'm personally kind of keeping close tabs on the kind of micro indicators of its growth.
100%, like that's a beautiful answer, and 100% agree. And especially because you are in a market in Africa that you see stable coins as like pivotal thing right now, right? So it's even more important to see that the stable coin movement and everything. So that's really really interesting. And so I have
I think I'll add one.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm very excited for the spicy question. I'll add one more. I think the boring plumbing that connects all this stuff together. If you're building in that space, like now becomes the time for all of this to get realized. I'm talking about like, how do you connect TradFi rails into these liquidity venues? How do you connect like payment rails into these venues? How do you connect kind of like funds to be able to like, put money in there, reg tech, compliance tech, all these like kind of prerequisites that are kind of holding liquidity back? There is an enormous amount of effort that we've been chatting to in terms of like the whole stack, kind of being built with the eyes of kind of like funneling that into places like Hyperliquid and kind of teams like them. And so for me, that's also quite exciting. They're not as flashy, as cool as like the new latest thing, but they will be the ones that I think will be the biggest driver of way more liquidity into the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so the spicy question is something that I do ask them, like I would say every guest that we have here, which is first, if we are in a bull or bear market, and second, what is your hype price prediction for the next, let's say, few months? So these are the two takes.
Overall bull. I'll
Okay.
always be a bull. I look optimistically at the world. A bear market is just a temporary lull to the next bull. Price predictions. I'm not very good at these and I never have been. The best advice I ever got is if you have to predict, you either predict very wide or very long. And so the accuracy of your prediction is at least not incorrect. So I'll predict wide and say Hyperliquid and the Hype token will at least be a lot higher than it is now. Maybe like 10, 20% higher during the course of this year. And I think that's a very safe bet and conservative one.
That's very conservative. So we had guests here that say, "Oh, Hype, few months, 1,000." Like okay, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So I would love for that to be the case. Maybe not if I want to be an HIP3 deployer or a staker for a new market, but as a bag holder, I probably would want.
Exactly. No, that's super nice, and thank you for your takes. So yeah, so we are arriving to the final stages here of our interview, and one thing that absolutely our listeners want to know is what's next for Silhouette. So if you can share maybe a little bit of your roadmap, your vision, and what's next for Q1, Q2 this year, that will be super nice, and maybe share some alpha if you have.
Yeah, so we're currently in closed beta. On mainnet today, we've got a cohort of a bunch of traders that are using our system as we speak. If you want to be part of that, please reach out to me. We'll happily kind of like, chat to some folks to get some feedback. We will be opening that up publicly fairly soon and kind of making it available to everyone after some internal testing. Then we're also going to be launching a couple new products that we've teased these a little bit in kind of from my personal account and from the company account. RFQs, a different way to kind of like ensure different venues and outlets for liquidity to flow into maybe some of these HIP3 deployers. We're also going to be launching TWAPs, VWAPs, and kind of like very eccentric Iceberg type orders into the market sometime soon. And then we're also going to kind of be like, we're working quite a lot with like a lot of the EVM teams to figure out how do we ensure that flow from EVM, like, the standard mechanisms on kind of buying, selling, liquidations, can tap into the order book in a bit more of an efficient way. And so all of these parts of the system are kind of in testing right now. And, once they pass security review, we ship it into the main product.
Perfect. And okay, so any big alpha that you may be sharing apart from all these new details that you are sharing for the next few months, like something that no one knows? I don't know.
Something that no one knows. It's hard to say what no one knows because I think the sleuths in Hyperliquid are very clued up. I would say there are 2 to 3 teams that are going to be deploying relatively soon, which are going to bring some interesting ideas and concepts. 2 of them we're working closely with to kind of bring new assets to Hyperliquid, new types of markets into Hyperliquid. We're also looking at building kind of, like I said, the boring layer. So, being able to like have a fund that wants to trade on Hyperliquid, bring their compliance and regulatory requirements on chain. It's a very kind of like interesting surface area to build on. It's not very simple, but we're also working very closely with them to kind of, distill those into a set of requirements that they're happy with, and so that these teams can kind of get their trading team traded within the Hyperliquid markets, bring more volume, bring more activity, and then also be kind of a source of like, demand for new types of assets that they would want to bring.
Absolutely. No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Chandler, thank you so much for being with us today. Also, if you want to share maybe your socials or the website for the people that are not that are listening on Spotify, can like get it and going, or on YouTube, they can just search right away if you want to share.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so from my side, you can follow me on X or Twitter. It's Chandler De Kock. You can also follow us on silhouette.exchange. Is the website. You can get a link there to go to our Twitter. All updates, we like to build in public, so a lot of what we've been updating kind of the ecosystem on regularly goes through there. So reach out to me on either one of those kind of platforms, and I'll happily kind of chat with you. And if you want to give some feedback on our product, kind of be an early tester, we'd love to have you.
Amazing. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Once again, Chandler, thank you so much for being with us today and share all this alpha about Silhouette. Really, really like it, and love that you are super OG and that you also bring a lot of takes of new markets such as Africa to the show. Like, I think that is so interesting, and it's really good to have some different takes here on GigaBrain. Thank you so much, guys, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you. Cheers.
GigaBrain is brought to you by Swell Labs. To find out more about Swell, go to swellnetwork.io and make sure to search for GigaBrain in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hit the follow button so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening.